When the Sun Darkens, Orbital History and 2040 AD Return of Planet Phoenix by Jason M. Breshears. Read by Kevin Stevens, also known as Grendel Dark. Chapter 3, A Planet of Two Calendars. After having viewed our present condition, it may be well for us to look back and review our former history and get a knowledge of the state of the world in former times. Jewish Rabbi Hillel III, 358 AD. We have now discovered 4 distinct dates in ancient history, all linked by 3 facts. The sun darkened each time, this occult of the sun occurring every 552 years, and these events were specifically recorded by the hands of men. The first events were in 2239 BC, and the last in 583 BC. And the intervening time between is precisely 1656 years, 552 times 3. This fact alone demonstrates for us that the Phoenix legend and cycle is the key that unlocks the secret to mankind's most archaic and important calendar. In the most distant epoch of humanity, there was a year when mankind was banished from his terrestrial paradise home and sent to wander the earth under a curse. The Creator had given men the ability to live free from doubt and constraints, but by listening to an interpreter, serpent, mankind fell under the curse and power of those beings and defined for them good and evil. Once mankind's eyes were opened, sinister intent of the Anunnaki, he was no longer beyond good and evil, but was from then on a slave to his own conscientiousness. Now his conscience his guide, man was cursed to condemn himself. He is banished into the world for a period of 6,000 years, 120 50-year Jubilee periods, until the return of the chief cornerstone that the builders, Anunnaki, rejected, the Savior. During the current 6,000 years of exile, the redeemed among men shall refill the positions in the government of God emptied by those Anunnaki that rebelled, the fallen ones. Once the number of the souls of men completes the spiritual pyramid, then will the stone that is made head of the corner descend and remove the curse in the 6,000th year. The Phoenix cycle of 552 years provides us with the elusive and enigmatic year that begins this 6,000-year timeline. The Hebrew year for the Great Flood, derived easily by calculating the birth-death genealogies in the Book of Genesis, was the year 1656. This 1656-year period, 552 times 3, is from mankind's banishment from Eden to mankind's destruction by the flood in 2239 BC, which we already deduced began a 1,656-year countdown to the 583 BC sun darkening predicted by Thales. Thus, the latter 1,656 years we have covered is merely a reduplication of the 1,656 years of the pre-flood world. This gives us the date 3895 BC as the beginning of the 6,000 years of man's banishment. This time covers exactly 6 Phoenix cycles of 552 years each. Though the Hebrew chronology accurately dates the flood at 1656, chronologies after the deluge are horribly obscured, and further rabbinical torture of texts and chronologies has resulted with a modern Hebrew calendar that is 133 years off today. In Genesis, the events of year 1, 3895 BC, concern how and why God cursed earth. In Genesis, as well as in several other Hebraic writings, we find mention that at this time appeared a fiery flaming sword. It appeared in the east. The sword is a symbol of judgment, reconfirming to mankind that the curse had begun and would not be lifted until the appointed time. To men, the spectacle was of an immense celestial blade in the heavens, but today we recognize that what was viewed was a large comet-like object with a long tail, Phoenix. The comet, rogue planet, has now become the symbol for judgment on Earth. This meaning will hold true throughout this book, even into the coming apocalypse. Priests and scholars in antiquity strived to determine year one. Their studies developed into what was by Roman times called the Annus Mundi system, meaning year of the world. Alexandrian scribes and historians in Egypt were familiar with the Annus Mundi chronology and spent their time attempting to correct the disparities found between variant timelines. All too often, overzealous priests or Christian authors altered their own sacred calendrical systems to suit their socio-religious purposes and then tried to justify the changes by finding parallels in Annus Mundi dating, while others modified Annus Mundi dates to correspond with assumed calendrical points in other dating methods. Over time, this dating system has resurfaced, been lost again, reverse research to again reassemble for a while before falling back into obscurity. Ever the victim of Roman and Muslim invasions, resulting in a loss of text and ruined libraries. Fanatical Christian and Islamic book burnings are lost into the private collections of old Europe. The Greek astronomer and geographer Eratosthenes was in charge of the famous Library of Alexandria under Ptolemy III. He studied many historical records in the 3rd century BC and was very knowledgeable of Annus Mundi dating. He believed that Egyptian dynastic records contained fragments of Genesis history. He even thought the world was spherical, and he divided the earth into 60 parts and calculated its circumference to within 200 miles of accuracy. Not too bad for a measure of 24,000 miles. Eratosthenes also drew a map of Europe, Britain, Ireland, the Mediterranean world, Arabia, Asia, and the Persian Gulf all the way to the Horn of Africa. He even theorized of unknown continents and was an expert mathematician. We cannot lightly ignore that he used Annus Mundi dating. Flavius Josephus, author of the famed Antiquities of the Jews, was acquainted with the Annus Mundi system and even attempted to date Solomon's reign in Annus Mundi years. Josephus had access to many temple archives. Another early writer was Senelius, who in about 800 AD preserved the Egyptian Book of Sothis, all in Annus Mundi years. Geoffrey of Monmouth, celebrated author of the History of the Kings of Britain, also used the Annus Mundi chronology to ascertain that the birth of Christ was 1008 years after the founding of the city of Londinium. Even in texts from secret societies like the Masons, we find that the official society documents recorded events in history in Annus Mundi dating, like the Inigo Jones document and Wood manuscript that both refer to Enoch and the Great Pyramid, as well as other events in biblical patriarchal times. The advantage of dating under the Annus Mundi system is clear. With years recorded in this way, we have an unbroken timeline from year one to the present, and even through the future to the year 6000, which under our present calendrical scheme is 2106 AD. This year, 2109, is the year 5903 AM. Year 1, 3895 BC, has been determined in 6 very unique and independent ways. 1. Phoenix cycles of 552 years, beginning with the sun darkening at the flood, involving 4 darkenings of the sun to 583 BC, 1656 years, are the origin of the pseudo-mythical traditions of 4 ages, or the 4 sons of golden times. Counting these same 1656 years backwards beyond the Great Deluge of 2239 BC, 1656 AM, provides us with the year 3895 BC as year 1 Annus Mundi. 2. Modern chronologist Stephen Jones in his work, The Secrets of Time, identified 3895 BC as year 1, having no knowledge of phoenix cycles, by simply calculating the periods of biblical genealogies, king lists, Hebraic records, and Assyrian astronomical texts. 3. Apocryphal text called Book of Adam and Eve II, composed at the Alexandrian Library from older source materials, reveals that from Jared's 40th year alive, there were still 5,500 years remaining until the end of the 6,000 years of man's banishment. By calculating the periods of the patriarchs in Genesis, we find that Jared's 40th year was the year 500 Hebrew reckoning, or Annus Mundi. Though Stephen Jones does not include any of his data in his research, using his chronology, we find that Jared was 40 in the year 3395 BC. This reveals that year 1 is 3895 BC, and the year 6000 is the year 2106 AD. 4. A conceptual pattern revealing that 3895 BC is year 1 is by reviewing the amazing synchronicity herein. 3895 BC, 1 AM, man banished from paradise, Adam cursed. 1948 year period to 1948 BC, 1948 AM, Abraham, born at the calendrical nexus between the BC and AM systems. 1948 year period to 1 AD, 3895 AM, Anno Domini, year of the Lord, calendar begun, counting down to the return of Chief Cornerstone. 1948 year period to 1948 AD, 5842 AM, Israel reborn as a sovereign nation to initiate the last days to the apocalypse and Armageddon. 5. Abraham's 1948 BC birth, confirmed in the nigh 1,000-year-old Talmudic commentary of Rashi in Leviticus Rabbi 28:1. The fact that his birth also aligns with 1948 Annus Mundi is not without significance. Josephus in Antiquities wrote that Abraham was born in the 292nd year after the flood, which we know transpired in 1656 Hebrew reckoning / Annus Mundi, as 1948 AM is 292 years after 1656 AM, and 1948 AM is likewise 1948 BC, we clearly find that 3895 BC is year 1. Josephus refers to Abraham's birth in Antiquities 1.6.5. 6. The final method of determining year 1 would require the reader to review the astonishing charts and material in this author's work entitled Chronotecture, Lost Science of Prophetic Engineering, which carefully demonstrates how the geometrical dimensions and arrangement of the Great Pyramid form a gigantic timeline that records 246 famous historical and future prophesied events into the year 2106 AD, or 6000 Annus Mundi. The Phoenix cycle of 552 years seems to end in 583 BC, with the sun darkening during the battle between the Medes and the Lydians as predicted by Thales. The old world was waning, and the new world of antiquity we refer to as classical civilization was one of emerging Greek and Roman states that would eventually result with powerful European and even American nations. Phoenix darkened the sun no more, and the legend died out with the cultures that bred it. But this strange visitor to our solar system continued to arrive on time, almost always unseen, and yet its effect was often felt powerfully on Earth. Though the orbital synchronicity allowing for direct transits that occulted the sun ceased in 583 BC, planet Phoenix will realign in the future so that the black suns of ancient times will terrify the world once more. In fact, it has already begun synchronizing in American history. We will review these instances and modern records later in this work. The legend of the Phoenix, as transmitted through the Greeks, reveals a venerable advanced astronomical science relative to a formerly known and practiced method of timekeeping. This system was practiced by the Egyptians, evidently the keeper of the secrets, not only of the calendar, but also of the nature and orbital chronology of planet Phoenix. Though Zacharias Sitchin is an undisputed authority on the Anunnaki and on the existence of Nibiru, to a fault, this scholar automatically links every reference to other planets mentioned by our predecessors that were not among those of the known system to have been Nibiru. A case in point is in his When Time Began, in his chapter Keeper of the Secrets, wherein he notes that on the papyrus of Queen Nesmet, the two cord holders measure the angle of a planet the Egyptian texts refer to as the red eye of Horus. To Sitchin, this is a reference to Nibiru, but more precisely, this is Phoenix, which turns the heavens reddish and the moon dark red, like blood. Further, the cord-holding measurements are overseen by a goddess of the calendar, and her symbol was the stylus of a palm branch, which the Egyptian scribes linked with the counting of years. The Phoenix connection is easily proven in that the early Greeks, for some unknown reason, referred to date palms as phoenixes, and traditions have, for unknown purposes, always linked the legend of the phoenix with these trees. And this is precisely what Planet Phoenix allowed the ancient Egyptian chroniclers to do, to count the years and maintain the calendar. To better understand this Egyptian science, we must return to our modern chronologist Stephen Jones. In his research, he reveals that there is a definite period of time noted throughout all of biblical chronology known as a cursed earth period, involving 414 years of curses, which were set upon and later lifted on men or nations. He noted that 1,656 years until the flood was exactly 414 times 4 years. The flood was a judgment introduced by the curse upon mankind and his continued rebellion against his creator. As 4 is the number for the earth, an arcane concept, 4 cursed earth periods resulted in a global cataclysm because mankind ignored the effects of the curse, rather than acknowledging it and seeking deliverance from his creator, which would have been provided. What Stephen Jones did not know was that the cursed Earth system of 414 years is entirely astronomical, relating totally to the orbital periods of planet Phoenix. The cursed Earth system was not unknown in early times. The Alexandrian scholar Aristarchus of Samos was studying at the library with its 500,000 texts when the ancient Parian Chronicle was composed from older sources in 265 BC, a text referring to the Great Deluge. Aristarchus himself had written that he believed that the world was destroyed every 2,484 years, a completely arbitrary number that denotes that this man must have had some educated reason for specifying this unusual span of time. We see clearly that 2,484 years is exactly 414 times 6 cursed Earth periods. Such a statement infers that he had access to literature 23 centuries ago that we no longer possess. Aristarchus had patience and tenacity, as revealed by the fact that he took the time to draft the first critical editions and commentaries on Homer's epics. In order to impress upon the mind the reality of planet Phoenix, its 552-year Phoenix cycle, and the 414-year cursed Earth cycles, this author provides the following chapters which contain timelines of the history of the world interwoven in a matrix of 552 and 414-year periods. These epochs connect events through human history with such amazing synchronicity that we can perfectly conclude the orbital secret to planet Phoenix, its actual orbital longevity in years. This is simply derived by factoring the differential between 552 and 414. Phoenix enters our inner solar system every 138 years. This means that a cursed Earth period was exactly 3 orbits of Phoenix, while a Phoenix cycle involved 4 orbits. And this orbital period was specifically known to the ancient Egyptians. Discovered upon Egyptian papyri of the Osirian text, as exhibited by David Davison, the Egyptians noted a 1,656-month period of time that was directly related to the flood. While this could easily be understood as a lunar code referencing a 1,656-year period, which the Egyptians were fond of doing, this is no doubt a reference to the orbit of planet Phoenix, for 138 years is exactly 1,656 months, 138 times 12. This astronomical synchronicity is perfect. further revealing that the flood was indeed in 1656 Annus Mundi, Hebraic reckoning. We have additional evidence of an Egyptian origin of this advanced orbital knowledge of Phoenix's 138-year orbit. It is found in an old Jewish legend. This story explains that Jacob, Israel, in his dream of the ladder to heaven, encountered two angels that had been cursed because they had warned Lot about the impending fiery destruction of the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah. The period of time these two angels were condemned to stay out of heaven was 138 years. Before we continue on with our study of this 138-year orbit of planet Phoenix, we shall now delve into the annals of history to see how the very framework of time itself involves Phoenix cycles and cursed Earth periods.